Hi all. Sorry, little delay there. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, a little bit after 3 o'clock. I know folks are still going to be joining us, kind of trickling in as we roll on by now that it's 3:01. You're joining us today for our Educators in Unison webinar. This is our second one in the series. This one today, we're going to be talking about student athlete success. We have quite an esteemed panel today. Excited to chat a little bit about kind of the different issues that will be facing student athletes. We are going to be kind of doing a Q&A style forum. We have folks who can utilize the chat functionality to access us as panelists. Also feel free to use the Q&A functionality. If you were to use the Q&A functionality as a participant, we'll be able to see those questions and integrate them throughout the next hour that we have together. We especially want to make sure to address anything that comes up frequently and often. So often, I think as participants, we all have the same question, but nobody pitches it forward. So we definitely encourage you to do so. Let's see, the only other thing that I might mention is that this is being recorded, I should say. So if you would like to access the recording afterwards, please feel free to contact us. I think I'll go ahead and pass it off to Adam Smith to make some introductions of our crew and introduce himself as well.
Sure, thanks, Allie. I really appreciate it. Can everybody, as they're coming in, just tell us where you're from? Yeah, we have Carol from San Diego, so throw in the chat section where you're from. We want to know. My name is Adam Smith. I am the Vice President for College Access and Success for Doorway to College Foundation. Doorway to College is a national nonprofit dedicated to building strategic partnerships and collaborations that help all students throughout the nation get access to college and complete a college degree. In that vein, we're bringing together some great panelists to talk about student athlete success, but in particular, the success of student athletes in high school as they matriculate to college in light of all of the challenges students, but also students that are involved in athletics are facing in light of COVID-19. So that being said, I want to begin by introducing some of our panelists. They will introduce themselves and then we'll get started. Erin, do you want to get us started, please?
Perfect, yeah. My name is Erin Gabriel. I'm the College Career Coordinator at Bowling Catholic High School in West Des Moines, Iowa.
Thank you, Erin. Chuck, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you work and what you do?
Chuck Lewis, Associate Director at the University of Maryland. I oversee all the academic services for the football program. I just want to thank Adam for having me on this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it. Mr. Coleman, please.
Hi, my name is Eric Coleman. I am the Senior Associate Athletic Director at Florida Atlantic University. I oversee our academics and student development and pretty much all of our student athlete welfare and well-being initiatives. And again, thank you, Adam, for having us. Great reunited with two of my former colleagues and a former student athlete that was at Akron when I was in my early stages of my career. So it's great to see those guys on this call as well.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Coach Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Rejewski. I'm an assistant track and field coach at the University of Michigan.
Thank you, Steve. Merce, can you introduce, please?
Yes, my name is Merce Poindexter, currently Associate Director at the University of Tennessee. I work primarily with our football student athletes and then our women's volleyball program as well. And then, as Eric mentioned, it's good to see a few of our former Akron connection with him and Chuck on the call. But thanks, Adam and Allie, for putting this together and allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. And we also have Marilyn Ruffin. So Marilyn, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, but as a parent, I want to offer you the first question. Can you talk a little bit, so as you introduce yourself, but also talk a little bit about some of the fears you have and some of the communication that you've received from athletics, because your son's a college student athlete, right? He's a basketball player. Talk a little bit about some of those fears, some of those concerns, some of the communication, and maybe some of the things that you wish you would get more of. Who's communicating with you, and what would you anticipate more?
Yeah, we right at the beginning. Good afternoon, Marilyn Ruffin. As you see in my background, I am a mom of two college sons. One is graduating from Hampton University. He was a basketball star himself in high school. And then my younger son, who's also on the line, Marlon Ruffin, where many of these trophies and hard-fought medals are here. And he's going into his third year in college, second year Division I at Omaha, Nebraska. And yes, I am concerned as a mother what this season will look like, if there is a season. As far as communication, I wish to be told what is the deal or what is it going to be. I know that I'm going to assume they're going to take all the precautions in this pandemic world right now. A lot of it is up in the air for me to hear what's going on. That's my concern, but we're all in the same boat, and I'm more of a prayerful mother to say that, you know, all will hopefully end positive note on that. But I also know he's a student athlete first. And being a student, I want to make sure that he's on track in his educational goals on there. It's a blessing to have him being on a Division I scholarship financially there, but that's also of concern to me, of wondering how colleges are going to handle how the finances may come with the travel or no travel, the contracts that they have with different universities to play, and the money that generates to the university. What does that mean with an athlete? What the finances could be with the scholarship. So I have that in my mind, but first and foremost, having him there and either remotely or in person for education is top priority.
And Marilyn, you are in Madison, but is Marlon back at school?
I'm sorry, am I speaking for him or are he going to speak? So
no, you can speak for him. You're the boss.
Okay. We are in 48 hours. We'll be riding them up to Omaha, Nebraska. Just so happens this weekend to be back on campus for the first time since March. Right after the basketball season, it just so happened. And then when the COVID hit, where the campus is shut down, right around spring break, he came home and has been home since. So this weekend, Saturday, as a matter of fact, we will be packing up the ride to take him to Omaha.
Outstanding. Thank you, Marilyn. So to everyone participating, if you have questions, please put them in Q&A. I have questions, the panelists have questions that we'll ask, but we would love to make this a two-way conversation. So as you have questions, we have coaches and people who work in academic services, and most everybody on the panel was a student athlete. So I was a student athlete, was first generation, wouldn't have went to college if it wasn't for football, right? Changed my whole life. Didn't realize what college was. It was just a pathway. And then had the privilege of coaching some real last chance U students in the JUCO level. So we can talk about that as well with junior college athletics and some of the challenges there. Marlon, can you take yourself on mute, introduce yourself, where you go to school, what sports you do, what your major is. But I also want you to talk about as a student, because we're hearing a lot coming from institutions about all of these measures being put in place, masks and social distancing and all of this, not even as an athlete, but as a student. How realistic are some of these things, and how do you feel? Do you feel safe going back?
Well, first I would like to thank you for having me on. As you guys know, my name is Marlon Ruffin. I'm currently going to be a junior at University of Nebraska, Omaha, following my second season in Division I. And speaking on that, we just had a Zoom call earlier today with my coaches and my team, as well as my athletic trainer. So basically what we have here henceforth, we have a whole set of procedures that we have to go through for the first 2 weeks to be able to get into a certain phase to where we all could possibly be back all on the court playing. So we going to be doing 2 individual groups with criteria of whoever lives with each other, with that being roommates and teammates, all in one house or in separate houses. So I'm basically feeling like basically if we follow the procedures and the steps, I feel like basically I honestly don't know. Essentially, basically you can only take it one step at a time. And here we are 14 weeks ago, where our athletic department didn't know where things were headed to. So it's good to finally get back on campus, and they have a set criteria that we have to follow to be able to have the year to where we want to.
Thanks, Marlon. I appreciate it. Aaron, next question. So I want to pose this to you from a high school perspective, because you work with high school students, right? And you work with high school students who are aspiring to go to college, aspiring to be collegiate student athletes. What are you hearing from them and their parents, right? Because they may or may not have high school athletics this fall, this spring. You also are an ACT and SAT test coordinator, right? And so a lot of the schools that are represented on here have went to test optional for admission, right? And that creates a barrier for our student athletes as well, right? So can you talk a little bit about what you're hearing and what are some of the intended and unintended consequences for some of the high school students and parents to keep in mind, and the people who work with high school student athletes that want to go to college?
Yeah, there's a lot of different uncertainty with, some kids will come in my office and say, well, my school's now test optional and I don't have to take ACT or SAT. And I said, well, NCAA needs a test score currently for the class of 2021 that's still required. And just a matter of figuring out when we're going to host the tests. We host both ACT and SAT, but with social distancing, we now can only have about 120 students take the test on the specific weekends. But I have a senior class of 339. Junior class is 330, so it's a little bit smaller, but they all, we started practices at school. So our football team is in the weight room and they're wearing masks and doing things. They're out on the field. But there's a lot of just uncertainty with, do I need to take the ACT? Should I try SAT? Because that's the first date that we're going to offer. So we're going to host SAT August 29th. And then ACT is followed up on September 12th. And so there's a lot of students that have concerns. Our 3 state schools in the state of Iowa have opened their application for admission. So that was done around July 1st. And so our students typically look at the 3 state schools in Iowa, which is Iowa, Iowa State, and University of Northern Iowa. And then August 1st, common application will open. And we have a lot of students who will use the common application, but they don't have a test score to maybe fill out. They might try, and if they do have an ACT or SAT score, they're not happy about it because we were done with school mid-March and we haven't had a testing opportunity. In fact, we were going to host the July 18th, Saturday, ACT, and it's been canceled. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty both with students and parents, but then also I feel like I can't help and advise my students because I don't know what's going on. We don't even know we had a meeting yesterday within our school and, we might be in person, we may not be, and masks will be required. And there's just a lot up in the air and there's a lot of things to navigate because there's finances tied with athletics and then opportunities for students. But we have to keep everybody safe too. And so there's just a lot of unknown, frankly.
Thanks, Aaron. Steve, can you talk a little bit, because I know you have 2 things always as a coach, you're dealing with the student athletes you currently have, but you're also dealing with the recruiting process. How is this uncertainty in the K-12 world, right, shaped your recruiting? Because obviously, you know, my kid took her test early and qualified early, and it opened things up for her, so she had more opportunities because she was a qualifier. But now in states like Michigan, states like Tennessee, where they're mandatory dates and students normally take the ACT or the SAT in the spring of their junior year, they didn't do that. So how is that posing some challenge in some of your recruiting stuff? And then I kind of have a follow-up, but can you address that, please?
Sure. Yeah, putting our current student athletes aside, looking at the recruiting part of it, like all NCAA coaches, regardless of sport, we're in a perpetual dead period. And so that's not allowing us to have any on-campus or off-campus contact with anybody. So we are doing a lot of things like this, a lot of Zoom and virtual and, you know, phone calls and text messages and all those types of things. And so from the admissions and academic side, it's a challenge, you know, in the generalized broad spectrum, but it's also challenging depending on, as was stated earlier, Michigan is not a school that is saying no to the option on SAT, ACT. As of now, you know, everything is fluid for everybody. And so that poses challenges in the recruiting process of admissibility, visits, eligibility center. And again, it really kind of depends on your academic level or admissions qualifications and what it takes, but it really is posing a lot of challenges. And you want to be encouraging and you want to be positive for these young people and their families, because you also understand what they've lost and what their challenges are, what their fears and their uncertainties are. And the hard part is, frankly, we don't have a lot of answers either. And so I think that's, you know, I think also, I don't know, and I have young kids as a parent, so I'm not anywhere near this process yet, but I know as a parent, I would want answers, but also I can at least have a hair of comfort of knowing we're all in the same boat. And it's not like something's being withheld, you know, and as you're talking to coaches, counselors like Aaron, admissions people, you know, knowing that they're going to disseminate information as they receive it. But I think the challenge for anybody in the working world is things change hourly, daily, weekly, as far as what the new protocol is. And so, you know, our position as coaches and as a department, I think, and as college coaches, administrators like that are on the call as well, is just to do the best to serve the people that we're creating relationships with, and whether it's about your institution, but more importantly, just to give them information, you know, that can hopefully be helpful for them in the process. And so it's very challenging. You know, we don't know what recruiting is going to look like, what visits are going to look like. And we've had a lot of discussion about those types of things on our end of posing questions to our administrators of, you know, and they don't have answers because frankly, all these universities are trying to figure out how to get kids back on campus. You know, they haven't necessarily moved toward how is recruiting going to look and, you know, visits and, you know, we're having conversations of like hotels and dorms and where do kids stay. And then so much of it goes back on what the family is comfortable with. You know, what they feel comfortable having their recruitment visit look like compared to what the normal visit has looked like. So, and I understand that from our president and our board of trustees, you know, down to, you know, our AD and our senior sports administrators, you know, they're trying to figure out how to make it safe for Marlon to come back on campus, how to make all of our fall sports be able to be safe to come back on campus and procedures and protocols. So where for me, I don't have fall athletes, you know, recruiting or coming back. I have regular school year kids coming back for track, but my next big thought is recruiting. And obviously as coaches are always thinking about recruiting, but so yeah, it's trying to be supportive, trying to be positive with families and parents and disseminate what information we have and how our specific institution is functioning and what's coming out, what's being rolled out to us.
Sure. And I think one of the things that I've heard we've been hosting these virtual forums now, Allie, since April, right? And what we've heard from students, whether you're in high school currently, class of 2020, right? Or you're a college student, is just be honest with us. Mm-hmm. If you don't know, Tell me you don't know. Stop saying everything's going to be fine when we get back to normal. One thing students can do, as we all know, they can sniff when we're being dishonest, right? They can smell fear. And when we're saying to them, they know it's not going to be normal, but just tell them this is your new normal. And we'll give you what we give you when we can give it to you. But right now, we just can't. Eric, can you talk a little bit about what FAU has done? Obviously, there was a huge transition for students in the spring going online. Students that had to go home to spaces that weren't the most safe. They may have not had access to technology. They didn't have laptops because they were relying on the institution for those things, right? What did FAU do to deal with that, right? With student athletes in particular. But what is FAU doing now in order to help student athletes knowing that they're going to go to classes that are going to be online, hybrid, some face-to-face? There's a lot of fluidity. So how are you being proactive in dealing with some of the lessons learned for spring? Does that make sense?
Well, we were fortunate when the shutdown happened, we were on spring break. So that gave us a little bit of time to kind of work through and navigate that. And I have a fantastic team. And within 2 days, we transformed all our operations to virtual. We use Teams, Microsoft Teams. We use FaceTime. I mean, we have different ways that we can reach out to our students. And then the university also offered up hotspots for students who didn't have those. And we also have a laptop loan program. So we have about 30, 40 laptops that we can check out to students and some iPads and different things like that. Fortunately, a lot of our students already have a lot of that technology already. So we were able to actually mail those who didn't have it. We send them laptops, we send them hotspots. And to be honest, I feel that it's been more productive with our students during this time than it was face-to-face. Because like in study hall, we have to, tell them to get off their cell phones and they're talking to girls and trying to just navigate stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And so now all of a sudden, like we have our weekly meeting, check-in, check-outs, and we do, I'm more of an objective base where, hey, you get it done, you get out. And so what I noticed, one of the things that I do every semester, I meet with any student who's under a 2.0, and I kind of go through like what happened, what are some things that we can do proactively to ensure that this doesn't happen. If they have any eligibility issues, I read through what the eligibilities are and I have them sign off on it. We send it to them and their coach. In those meetings, like in my office, they come in trembling and scared and think I'm a yell because they think I'm a big scary dude. But I'm like, I can be, but like most of the time I'm like, I'm a big teddy bear, but like they also know if I close that door and need to get real with them, that will happen too. But most of the time, like I said, it's all love. I come from a place of that. Those meetings in my office maybe last 5 minutes. These meetings were like 30, 45 minutes. Like I couldn't get them all. Like I think partially because like they're always on their phone. And so like some of them were like on FaceTime with these meetings and they were locked in and we were talking. And then another piece too is like our staff, we use Canvas and we have Canvas Observer access so we can check, in and see how things are going. But like now for these meetings, we have the students go in, share their screen, navigate. So now we can see how well they know how to use Canvas and how to access announcements and how to do all these. So I've seen that is actually for like a lot of our students, it got better. And granted, we had pass-fail options in the spring for some of their classes, and we ended up having one of the highest team GPAs that we've ever had. But I noticed that, and I think also because they didn't have workouts, they didn't have travel, they didn't have a lot of those distractions. I think they were so bored that they didn't have anything else to do that they did their homework. So that's one of the things that I found that actually happened during that time. And then I want to back up to maybe this can help with the ACT prep. I know FAU required that all our students still had an ACT score. And so I know pretty much most of your schools in the state of Florida will have that because we have a board of governor metric and all these different things that require. So I know if you have any students who are looking to come to Florida, I know even though the NCAA waived it, even for this incoming year, the students still have to have that. And then to continue back on the other path. So we have a summer bridge program. So we started that virtually. So we brought in all our football and basketball are here. They're on campus. They've been here since June 8th. And we're doing a lot of the same procedures that Mr. Ruffin was talking about that they're doing in Omaha. And then so our students have 24-hour swipe access into our computer lab, and we've removed computers, the keyboards, and we removed chairs so they can practice social distancing. I'm actually installing cameras in there so that my staff can monitor from at home so that they can actually keep an eye on that space and make sure that it's social distancing. And then just last week, we installed our check-in desk, we installed a plexiglass. And so we're going to do I have 10 full-time on my staff, plus we have 5 GAs. So we're going to do a rotation. So we'll have one GA at the front desk, one in our office. We'll still have our virtual meetings, but we'll have someone in our space. We just built a new $60 million academic complex, and so we don't want it to get destroyed with students being back on campus. So we'll have someone there, plus we'll have it on camera. And then we'll still do everything remote from in that space. And then the students now have access to, they'll have access to, we have about 80 computers in there, but they'll have access to about 40 of them. We'll by the time we do the social distancing, and they have 24/7 access into that space so they can do their work. And then we've actually even started doing virtual study hall. So right now football has a virtual study hall on Microsoft Teams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, do a 2-hour block. And then they have groups that they can go into and click on and work with our learning specialists and work on. We even have some writing workshops that are going on. So we've been very creative during this process, and our students are really receptive to it because it's funny because the technology is in front of them and seeing us on the screen, they're far more engaged than they were in person. So we've been pretty pleased to see this transition. Obviously, we miss seeing them face to face, but right now I feel pretty confident that we'll be fine moving forward. And then this summer with our summer bridge is that we're acclimating all of our students to navigating all our online systems, and then even our other students who are not coming in, all our incoming students are doing this, so we can identify who has technology issues right now. What are some bad habits that they're having over the summer, so we can rectify them, notify their coaches, and start dealing with them right now. And some of the students who may not be doing what we need to be doing, and if the season is canceled in the fall, then we'll push them to spring admissions if they're not taking care of what they need to take care of this summer.
Yeah, that's great. Great. 60 million, huh, Coleman? He had the number, didn't he, Chuck?
Well, I was on the whole,
spiel. I know, I get it. Go Owls, go Owls.
It's not just athletics though. We got a whole bunch of other stuff going in there.
Yes, sir. I know. Chuck, so Andre is on participating, and he has a question. So Andre was a student athlete in college. He has 2 boys that are college student athletes. You were a student athlete in college too. You're a dad, all of that. Andre's really struggling because his boys want to play. That's how it is as athletes. All we care about is shoot. I've played when I shouldn't have played plenty of times. So Andre's having a really hard time trying to decide with his head or his heart if his boys go back and if they go back and play, especially in a movement, in a time that we're talking about Black Lives Matter, student athletes, many African-American, right? This is hitting the African-American community and the Latinx community harder, COVID-19. Do lives really matter on the field? All of those kind of things. What advice do you have for Andre, or at least to let him be a little bit more confident if Andre's boys were at the University of Maryland College Park, playing with you and coach there, Coach Locks, right? What does that look like? And what advice would you give him?
Well, I think first, when you talk about going back, safety's first and health is first, so as a parent, you got to think about that. What's the most important thing as far as what's going to be in place for their health. So I would say safety and health first to make sure that they're going to be in a good place there and that they're taking the proper precautions. Is there going to be social distancing going on? How is it going to be? Is there going to be practices and things of that nature? And a lot of that stuff is left up to your county and state too as well. So for example, the University of Maryland's in PG County. So there was a time where PG County was at a high spike with the coronavirus. So we were in a different situation maybe than Michigan, just depending on where we were located. So all that goes into it as well. The biggest thing, regardless of what happens, whether there's a season or not, it's going to be important that they develop a routine. Okay. So if they're taking classes online, a routine is going to be key. For us working from home as professionals, we had to develop a routine because we were used to being in person. We were used to being interacting. And a large part of our job is building a relationship. So when we went online and had to work from home, it changed, right? And then working from home is different, right? So not only just for the students, for the staff, but particularly as it pertains to the students, all home situations aren't great. So for example, somebody might be going to a situation, they might be going to a nice home and a good situation, but they might have 4 or 5 brothers and sisters, and both their parents might be CEOs or principals. And so they got to help out and watch the kids. But then at the same time, they still got to log on for the virtual time that they got to do for study hall. And so those were some of the things that came into place and were a challenge. So the biggest thing from our standpoint is trying to help the students find a routine. And what we try to stress to them is all we have is communication through Zoom and your cell phone, all right? And so the coaches are a big part of that as well, since they're not doing a lot of chalk talk. They're not really having a lot of time where they're really meeting with the student or really out on the field with the students. They've been helping also out with academics too, communicating with them the importance of making sure that they're being responsive. But I think our staff has been great, just making sure that we've just been connecting with them as many times as we possibly can. Obviously, they have the virtual online sessions and everything that they have, like a lot of the other schools do. Zoom has been huge. I'm sure that's big in the stock market at this point in time because, I mean, they're hitting top of the charts because everybody's utilizing it. It's been great. But I think finding a routine is huge. I think making sure that safety is first. We all love the game of football, especially for those that play, but we have a basketball player here. I mean, sports is a big part of our culture. And in times like these, like you talked about, Adam, with everything that's going on, whether it's social injustice issues and things of that nature, sports kind of helps cure that, right? And so a lot of people are struggling with that because sports it helps you take your mind off reality. When I played football and I was in between the lines for those 60 minutes, I didn't have to worry about paying bills. I didn't have to worry about what was going on outside of me, whether I needed a oil change or my tire was flat. I didn't have to worry about any of those things. And so these times that we're in right now are unprecedented because this is a different way of living for all of us. We've never had a situation where sports were gone, churches were closed, and things of that nature. So everybody's learning at the same rate. So that's a little bit helpful, but finding a routine, sticking to the basics of the things that you have to do. And if you don't know something, communicate. That's the biggest thing I would say.
That's great. That's great. I think one of the things, and Merce, I'm gonna ask you, there on Rocky Top, one of the things my wife, who works at UT, also has noticed is that her appointment show rates with students via Zoom, via Teams, via all the platforms. People are using Google Voice to text. People are doing all of these innovative things, right? She says her appointment show rates this spring and this summer have been 98, 95, 96%. I mean, ridiculous numbers, the engagement with students. I think one of the things that we, as the old folks, need to notice, right, is what Chuck was talking about and what Eric was talking about is the students are signaling to us by, I always used to say that students won't tell us they're doing well, they show us by their footsteps, right? So they're showing us that this is how they want it to be. They want to engage this way. They want to connect. It's for us that feel comfortable going back to an 8 to 5 Fred Flintstone lifestyle in our office, right? But students, by their engagement, by their connection, they're showing us something different, right? They're saying, okay, this Zoom thing is great. I don't want to walk across campus to your office. I can get you on FaceTime. That's cool. So Merce, can you talk a little bit about the coaches in particular, right? So Chuck kind of touched on this about not having time, because as a former coach, and Steve can talk about this as well, having an opportunity to go deeper with your student athletes, because you're not focused on winning and on the field, because you can't do that right now, right? Steve can't work on their drive phase, because right now we can't do that. So I have to get to know you and your goals and different things. So has this afforded coaches to engage more on the academic side and the life after side? I mean, I saw Coach Pruitt out protesting, right, and marching. So talk a little bit about that and what you've seen that might be different in this season than in past seasons.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, and to Chuck's point as well, when everything kind of broke with COVID and we had to leave campus, our coaches are used to controlling everything, right? As far as controlling the time, when the student athletes come to the complex. So, coach was looking at me like, what do we do? I have a full staff of people here. We're not having practice. We still have class. So he was looking at me to really help lead and say, you know, I told him, I said, Coach, I'm gonna need your assistants. I'm gonna need your graduate assistants to be on board with these students, checking in with them daily. And, you know, and our staff being the ones that kind of say, okay, this is what each of these students need to do. And having the coaching staff really serve in that capacity and help academics out in that regard. And to your point, our students, they've grown up with technology. I mean, to adjust the Zoom, that was more something for us than it was for the kids. And they have, for me personally, it's been a great opportunity to really break down walls and barriers within higher education, right? You know, I've had to have one-on-one sessions with some of my students, and my 10-month-year-old son's like right there crying in the background. I'm like, hey, hop on. We're going to be working with a student right now. And it's really given my students the opportunity to see myself and our staff in a different light, right? And they realize, hey, we're all in this together. We're working from home and navigating the uncertainty of everything together. But I think it's drawn us a lot closer. And to the point of parents kind of in their concerns as we head into the fall semester, you know, here at Tennessee, we've really been, we made it a point to be very transparent with each of our parents, and where we touch base with them weekly on where we're at and how we're going to assess the safety plans for each of our students coming back to campus. We've been on campus now. Our football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and volleyball student athletes have been on campus now for about a month. And the information that we've heard has changed a lot within that month. But I think that we've done a really good job working collaboratively with academics and our trainers and our coaches to give our parents the information that they need, right? Because whenever you're not communicating with the parents, then you know, they're going to fill in those gaps with what they think might happen. So we just want to be real transparent about where we're at today, what are our plans for the fall, to Chuck's point, to have our students get on that routine. And then also, what are our plans, like big pictures? We had like beyond the fall and into the spring, right? Like COVID surprised us all, but what can we do to not be surprised again? So we formed a lot of different task force within athletics, also within amongst campus, different campus entities, to kind of talk about what are our plans to get our students back into routine. Because to your point, Adam, our students, both coming to this campus and then our students that are returning, they've been through a lot over the past 3 months, and a lot has gone on. And, you know, as we head into the fall, into a presidential election cycle, you know, what that brings, you know, it's important for us as higher education administrators to understand that our students are going through a lot, and it's going to affect students differently. You know, I've seen it. Some students, you know, they go home and, you know, their environment looks different than the next student. So just kind of understanding that. And I think from my perspective, as someone that works so closely with students in a student success role, it's really given me the opportunity to lead up to administrators at the senior level within athletics and on campus, and share those stories of students and what they're going through and how they're adjusting. So I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of coaches and student success professionals to really help senior level administrators on campus as we kind of navigate what the fall and spring is going to look like.
That's great. And seeing it just as students, right? I mean, yes, you play in Neyland Stadium in front of 120,000 people, but you're a student. You're a young person, and all of this stuff that's happening in the world, whether it's masks or no masks and politicizing that, whether it's social justice and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, whether it's all of these things happening in our communities, our students are facing that. And they've been at home now for 6 months. 6 months of the biggest change I'm 49. 6 months in the time that I've seen our country change more than in my lifetime. I mean, the Washington football team changing their name, never thought I'd see it. I mean, that fast. Roger Goodell in 48 hours saying exactly what those players told him to say. I mean, think about that. And then you're going to inject all these people back into a community with divergent views on things, with divergent perspectives. The best unifier is athletics, right? Because it didn't matter if my guys came from rural Georgia My guys came from the inner city and the muck of South Florida. Those are just my guys. And they all hung out together and spent time with each other and loved on each other. Steve, since you coach a fall and a spring sport, people don't know that track is fall and spring, or I mean winter and spring. Your spring sports season was canceled, right? The NCAA granted all those kids another season. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coach. But from what I know, right, the NCAA granted another season, but didn't grant the additional dollars, right? So how does that look for the University of Michigan? So if my daughter's running track at Cincinnati and during her spring senior year, she had already been accepted to graduate school at another school, what things, moving parts, have you had to adjust if you say a fourth year kid wants to get their outdoor season in? What are some of the unintended consequences of the NCAA saying, and all rightfully so, we're going to give you another spring season?
Sure, and we've gotten this question in our own recruiting forums like this and those types of things with 20s and 21s, or 21s and 22s. Right? We're not doing any 20s at this point, but I think, again, like anything else, it basically it's the federal government left it up to the states, in putting it in a truthful manner. If we look at the world we're in right now, so basically the NCAA said, spring sports, baseball, softball, golf, outdoor track and field, you're going to get your season back. But then it's up to every institution on how they want to handle it. And so essentially it number one, like everything else, it comes down to dollars. And so what you're going to look at this next year, and this is, mindfully that we have a season, or we get to next spring and we get to run, God willing, you're going to see some big inequities, because essentially, let's take women's track. You can have 18 scholarships in women's track is the maximum. You're going to have some programs that are going to be operating on 22 scholarships because their department was willing to fund kids to come back and use their fifth or sixth year, where other programs said, we don't have the dollars to do it. There's so much uncertainty with losses from football coming up, and obviously more at the BCS level, your biggest schools, but I think there's a trickle-down effect to all of this. And some schools that said you can bring them back, but you have to fit it within your limitations. So every school had the ability to do it however they wanted to. And so the ripple effect of this will be felt for a couple years, because every kid on your roster, on our roster, on a track and field roster, every kid now has an extra outdoor season that would fall in their fifth year. And so the unintended consequences will then be the evaluation of kids wanting to come back, and then possibly you have less scholarship dollars to then go recruit with for prospects that are coming out of high school. But the moving parts in all of that still come back to degree progress, grad school admissions, dollars, because at least in our sport and most spring sports, I don't know off the top of my head to quote it exactly, so don't quote me, but most of the spring sports I believe are equivalency sports. So it's the same thing. If you have someone that's on a partial scholarship, do they want to come back possibly at that same level and pay for another year of school? So there's all these moving parts, and then obviously it makes it challenging as a program. How do you best recruit and try to pin down the kid that's already on your team for them to make a decision in the fall of, well, what do you want to do next year? Where are you at graduation wise? Where with your undergrad? Where are you thinking about graduate school? Do you have a possible job or internship lined up before you can offer maybe that person's whatever dollars they had been on to a high schooler? And at the same time, the kid on your roster, you know what you're getting. It's a proven commodity, all those types of things, and they're already family. So you want to exhaust that process as best you can. And so, there's unintended consequences, but I think at the same time, you're also not obligated to that 5th year, that 6th year. So if it's time for that person to graduate and move on to a different institution or into the workforce or into their career or whatever it is that they had planned on anyway, that may still happen. And so those are conversations that you need to have and try to have. And you know, from April through now has been a crazy cluster of trying to figure that out within our own program, let alone, you know, there's the thing called the transfer portal at the NCAA for the NCAA student athletes. And I can tell you for a fact, there is, I think, 20,000 names in that. 10,000, it's either 10 or 20,000. Either way, it's a huge number. I know there's a big difference between the two of those numbers, but I mean, it's a large number. And it's not necessarily that every one of those kids is unhappy where they're at, but life and things happen. And so it's, but I think it will be less immediate as it is right now, because we now have school year to plan for the seniors to be, and then the following seniors to be, and the following seniors to be. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it. It's not, you know, everybody's like, oh great, everyone got their year back, but it's a lot more to it. And frankly, every school is facing massive deficits. We're seeing sports cut and programs cut and roster sizes shrunk and all these things to try to trim money, and understandably, you know, and so all those things I just listed off. And then who knows, you know, whenever we get out of this, how far back are we going to creep back to what was normal? You know, and none of us know that until we get there, and whenever that happens, you know.
Well, and Steve, to your point, thank you. I think this is a time, and I was listening to a podcast that was talking about, this is one of those watershed moments in our country to see what businesses, what ideas, what individuals, what institutions pivot and learn and become the new thing, right? I mean, if Coach Saban got an email address at Alabama, I know for a fact Coach Saban wasn't answering email. Now Coach Saban has email, right? I mean, that's crazy, right? So he's even pivoted to say, okay, Miss Terry isn't going to deal with all that. I'm going to get those now. So I think those changes and those pivots for how we do it, I understood as not only a former fall athlete coach and former fall athlete when they said, because fall's the easiest, right? Football's the easiest one to deal with. When you start talking about track and softball, things that a student has to pay tuition, because you're not getting a full ride often to run track, right? You're getting a partial and you're getting this. So you have to absorb that cost, even if you planned on getting a job at a company or going to grad school. Now you have to be admitted back into Michigan to go to a grad program that late in the spring. Have the Michigan track program have the resources that they are willing to give you because you're part of the family. And you need to have the financial resources to absorb another year of school to hopefully be able to run in the spring. And when those things come out, it's one of the things that even I, a neophyte compared to y'all, said, it's a little more complicated than that, right? One of the final questions that I want to throw out to Eric and Chuck in particular, but Eric, you can take it first. FAU has student athletes from all over the country, right? How are you dealing with, because the regulations, as Coach brought up, the regulations in Knox County are different from the regulations even in Blount County, Tennessee, let alone in Tennessee compared to Florida, compared to Michigan, compared to Wisconsin, compared to Iowa. You have student athletes that right now are all over the country, right? So how are you dealing with bringing them in, dealing with educating them about this virus and the potential side effects? Because based on their own governor, their own municipality, it may be being viewed very, very differently from how the campus and the experts, because you have the scientists and the data people sitting right there at FAU, right? So how are you doing that, knowing that your student athletes are coming from everywhere and they may have gotten very different information?
Well, I mean, we try to follow the CDC recommendations. We're using, like you said, science and logic and not, you know, myth and theories and you know, home remedies. So for us, like we have a list of hot spots. And so depending on where you come from, there's different quarantining regulations for those students. So if you're in New York or a hotspot area, then, but if you're in let's say in Iowa or a place where you don't have a lot, you can actually get tested there and then come directly here. And then you can start, but if you're coming from, we have a lot of international students as well. And so that's been probably our biggest hurdle and obstacle to kind of deal with them. And I mean, honestly, I just don't see how it's even possible. And we had a win just last week, allowing them to be able to take online classes because, I won't get into our administration, but like that was something that happened that wouldn't allow those students to be able to enroll, and they had to be in a face-to-face class. So I'm gonna keep it non-political. But luckily that was overturned. So we're still trying to work on a return plan. And I have sport oversight for women's basketball, also men's and women's soccer. And both our soccer teams have international students from all over. The one thing that I noticed, I would say here, especially when we did, because we had a basketball player from New York who came in, and because it was a hot spot, like campus, they're not playing any games. Like when your 2-week quarantine, you in your room, they bring you a tray of food, you don't leave. Like period, point blank. You got your 2 weeks, and then once you get that, you have to get a test, and you can't do anything until you have a negative test result back. And you're basically quarantined in that office, in that dorm room or wherever it is. And so, I mean, we're taking the precautions. The bigger thing is that I know someone had on there, what do we do for when they're all off campus? The thing is, like, we have no oversight of that. And that's the part where it gets a little dangerous. I know we just had 4th of July, so all those students who went home, so we retested all those students again. And so we're doing, follow-ups during period. But when we have them in our space and they have practice and the structure, and we're fairly confident that, we got a pretty good, tab on those. But at the same time, they're 18 to 23-year-old young people, and they're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, you can ask people, you can check my references. I wasn't always the most I was always respectful, but I can't say I always did what was right, And so at the end of the day, we have to understand that they're humans, and just like we're going stir crazy, they're going to go stir crazy. And then when you start bringing in different people from campuses and girls and different things like that, like there's only so much that we can do. We can educate them and just, and prepare them with the real information so that they can make informed decisions and hope that they make good decisions. But that's just like any parent, like whether they're at home or they're on campus, they're going to do the same things. And so I know the one father is worried about, look at what they're doing at home. So the same behaviors that they're doing at home for social distancing is what they're going to do on campus. And so in a way, we have I'm not saying your parents don't have much control, but there's a lot of things because we keep them so busy with the daily activities with their sport that we can reduce some. I'm not gonna say eliminate all. We can interrupt it a little bit because we can make them so tired that all they want to do is go back to their room and go to sleep and then do homework and things of that nature. But I think there's no right or wrong answer. There's no sure thing to this whole thing. It's trial and error. Even us as adults, like we see somebody we know, we pull our mask down and walk up and talk to them. Like it's not easy. So we're all adjusting to this new normal. We're all trying to take the proper precautions and continue to educate them. But as long as the CDC doesn't put out, and we're following the guidelines from the CDC and not from other outside influences that are telling us otherwise. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
Chuck, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped us was that the team doctors got a lot more involved than they've ever been. So a lot of those teams, for example, football has already came back, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But for some of those other sports where they have student athletes that live all across the country, a lot of those teams have been having weekly meetings where the team's doctors are involved and just talking to them about the do's and the don'ts. Now, again, like to Eric's point, it's hard to really say what they're doing when they're not on campus and they're not around the support staff and the people that are in place, or the coaches or the trainers and things of that nature. But at least the communication is being said to them, and it's being told to them, hey, here's some things that you need to think about. Hey, if you're doing this, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So the team doctors weekly have been on those weekly meeting calls with some of those other sports. Now let's get to football. So our football program came back on campus June 8th. Okay, so they got back. Everybody was cleared. Everybody got tested. So I believe all of our student athletes are going to be tested once they get back. So now I think we have football, we have men and women's basketball, soccer's back, and we got volleyball and a couple other sports. But anyways, as far as our football program, everything was good when they got here. They were transitioning into this new normal way of working out and things of that nature. Well, then the 4th of July came up. Okay. And so then they all go back home, and some of these hot spots, your Floridas and some of these other places, some of our guys are from, they go back home, they come back, and guys got the coronavirus, and it spreads through some individuals throughout the team. Well, we had to shut workouts down. We're currently shut down right now from our football program, and it's out there. So I'm not telling any information that you can't look up, but that's what's going on. It's unprecedented because you just don't know. Every day is different. And so we took the proper precautions. So actually, even for us, they have team meetings daily, but weekly, the team doctor for football goes on there and talks. But even on our weekly staff meetings with the coaches, the doctor's also telling us some of the things that we need to do even while we're at home. So that information's been good, but the problem is you're not around these guys every day, all 24 hours. And so when you're not around them, they're young, they're tired of being quarantined and things of that nature. So that's a challenge. And then to kind of talk a little bit to Eric's point, those individuals that got the coronavirus, they had to be on a strict quarantine. They couldn't leave the room, and food had to be brought to them. But again, it's a challenge because now these guys are being quarantined. You got some of these incoming freshmen that it's the first time away from home. They're not around their families. And so they're in a situation that they've never been in before. So it's a challenge right now, particularly with our football program, because we were working out and then we had to shut it down. Like some of the other schools had to shut it down as well, but we had to shut ours down, and we don't know when it's going to reopen. And that's the part that has been a challenge for everybody, just not being sure.
And if I could jump in, and if we have any parents out there, please understand that quarantine is not fun, and it's for the safety of your child as well as other people around them. So they're going to call and they're going to complain and they're going to feel like they're in jail. And we need you all to stand in solidarity with us through that process. We appreciate, but we're not hurting your baby. Trust me. I would let them do it. I would when I look at parents and during the recruiting process and I say I treat them like they're my own and they're in good hands, that is a true statement. So everything that they're doing, and I get it, it's not a great process. Like Chuck said, they're bringing them food, they're locked into a room by themselves, and and they can't have contact with anybody, but that's for their own safety as well as everybody else around them. So please, if you have a student athlete who's going through that situation, please understand and help us help them.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
That I can tell anybody who I would send my kid to any one of these people on this call. They're on this call for our nonprofit for a reason, not just because they're coaches, because of the kind of people they are, right? Tried to send mine to Coach Steve, but she didn't want to listen to me and go somewhere else. But
we won't get into the whole Akron-Kent State thing here.
Daddy couldn't force her to go, and that was fine, because then when she was miserable, it was her fault. The one thing I can tell you as a parent of a student athlete, and having spent my whole career, whether it's at Alabama or at Akron or at anywhere, working with normal students, student athletes love structure and they're busy. Busy works great for student athletes. That's the reason spring football was created, just to give them something to do. They're practicing all the time, right? And practice is different things, but the more engaged they are, the better they're going to be. Now, the challenge is going to be they're also students. And when every coach and every administrator on this call is worried about not when the athletes are back on campus, it's when the normals come back on campus. Because then all of the normals, man, please, they live off campus, they have a job, they go see their girlfriend, you can control your athletic program. And the one thing coaches and administrators with athletics love is structure. And we had some questions about that. So one question was asked by Josh that I want to make sure to get to, because we got about 1 minute. Josh is asking about, as a JUCO coach, I coached JUCO for years, please talk about JUCO as a viable option for student athletes. What are the benefits and the challenges? Well, everything isn't Last Chance U. Those were, in particular, the one in Mississippi, they got an Adidas contract, right? I washed uniforms for the Last Chance U I worked for coaching. So that's really a inaccurate depiction of how difficult it is to be a junior college athlete. Junior college athletics, the reason why people go JUCO is one of two reasons. The first reason is, hey, I don't have enough tape, enough film, enough times. I want to get re-recruited. I was offered to go D3 or D2, but you know what? I want to be able to improve, and I think I can be a D1 person. So I want to get re-recruited is reason one. Reason two is I'm not a qualifier. That's 9 out of 10 student athletes that are competing at the JUCO level, especially in football and basketball, and even in track and field. Is they didn't qualify. And for our students of color, our first generation, low income, Black students, Latinx students, it's these test scores that are an issue. So understand that working with the best test prep, and that's what we do as a nonprofit. So if you're interested, we have been offering virtual boot camps for students, 5 hours. We improve ACT scores 2 to 5 points after just 5 hours of virtual prep via Zoom. And we improve SAT scores 50 to 150 points just after 5 hours of strategy prep, because we teach the strategy behind taking the test. The misnomer is, I'm a non-qualifier, I'm gonna go JUCO and play for a year, and then I'm gonna go D1 and go over with Chuck over at Maryland. Well, that's not how it works. If you're a non-qualifier, you have to graduate and get an associate's degree. And most of the time, you didn't qualify because of that test score, you're gonna place into developmental reading, developmental math. So now an associate's degree isn't a 2-year proposition, it's a 3, sometimes 4-year proposition. So Last Chance U glorifies something that is the bounce back student athlete that was at Florida State, then went to Last Chance U and went to Auburn right away. He qualified already. This situation requires graduation if you're going to come right out of high school. The best prep in the absolute country is us that do it because of our mission with Doorway to College Foundation. People can just hit me up. We'd love to partner with you. Allie, you want to close us out? Thank everyone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I want to thank everyone. I feel like I've never been on a panel where I knew so little compared to those who know so much. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us this past hour. I would encourage any folks to check out doorwaytocollege.org. I know that there were a lot of questions that we did not get to answer. So what I'll do is try to put those forth to our group and see if they would like to respond to those via email. We do have the names of who asked what question. So I'd like to be able to do that for the folks who spent the last hour with us, with thanks to you. We do have a couple of upcoming Educators in Unison forums for those who might want to join us. August 13th, we're doing one we're really excited about. It's called Creating Belonging for All Students in Times of Civil and Social Unrest. Kind of a long title, but such an important topic. We're so excited to be able to put that on. And then on September 17th, we'll be doing kind of a what I wish I would have known in high school. And we'll have a panel of current students with us for that. Thanks again for your time. We hope to see you again next time, and have a great day.